Good day, everybody, for the last live stream of 2018. And, well, what you see is Blade, synthesizer which we released quite a few years ago, which has which had for the very first time the XY pad, which later on also appeared in Blue 2, in Predator 2, in Submoon Base 2, and but okay, let me check if everything is working here. I'm gonna look at the chat room here. 1 second. On the right side I have my laptop, and there I can see, of course, how things are running. Give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, hello there. Hi, guys. Yeah, nice that you check in, guys. And as mentioned, this is the last one of this year. And in 2018, I started doing these live streams. I do a bit less trade shows now, and because I notice if you do a live stream, everybody can watch it afterwards, and this way you also can show people things about products or new products, or simply having one theme on one evening talking about one thing. And my idea was to have today a bit of talking about ambient music, so that we have a nice chill evening today, a chill live stream with some products, and I will show you mainly what you can do if you have, for instance, Blade or Prisma, of course, Predator 2, if you have an existing preset, and what you can do, for instance, to tweak it around and make it more suitable. For instance, if you make ambient music. Well, this preset here is from Blade. So what happens is here you see some multiple dots flying around, and this one has a movement and it changes. Let's see here, very minimal. It changes essentially only the filter I see here. The filter is a 12 dB low pass filter. So it wobbles a bit the filter, and of course I also can address this to the bass harmonics. So if I change here the amount, doesn't want to do what I want to do. Okay, it's freezed up here for some reason, and I don't know why. Oh, I put it off, of course. This is the bypass function. So the bass is the bass harmonic, the fundamental, which you also can move around. So you can do it static here, or you can do it by using this dial. This is the amount control, and it makes that in the vertical movement it changes the bass harmonic. So I double click, it goes to 0 again. Could pick also range or timbre. Let's see, odd even. I'll add some ripple. Let's see how that works out. So with Blade it is the case that you have the XY which control the harmonizer, which is essentially you control the harmonics of the waveform, and the upper and lower dials are amount dials for the vertical movement, and here you see the same type of amount controls, but these are for the vertical movement. Of course you can go to another presets. Let's see what we have here. So let's say if you make ambient music and you think, okay, this one is it's not so bad, but you want to tweak it a bit. What you could do, for instance, make the tempo based going a bit slower. It moves a bit too fast maybe. You can see it loops and it's in play mode. Now here I can change the speed, so make it, for instance, much slower. Now here you have some basic controls. You can move around here just as a test. As you can see here, this is a very important one, the timbre, because timbre is something which is here. The timbre is already a kind of waveform which you can select here, which is now active, but if you go more to the middle, it's the other half. So you mix in between these, what you see here, and the timbre, which is a kind of preset waveform. It's Blade is more a synthesizer, which is, especially if you use the XY and the harmonizer, it's a trial and error, what I say, because sometimes you run into some fantastic, unique sounds, and sometimes it doesn't sound well. And that's, of course, if you have something which is very experimental. Now, this one is called Saturn Light. That one would be nice for some ambient music. And maybe you want to have it, here's an amp control which controls the main volume, but also the main envelope contour. So here you could say make the release a bit longer or slow attack. And that makes it already more spacey. And that's, of course, with every synthesizer. If you see in the amp section with the raw Papen synthesizers, you always will see attack, decay, sustain, and release, because that controls the main volume contour. So if I shut down here the attack and shut down the release, you hear it's not very suitable for ambient music. So here you need to really control that you get a very slow fade in the sound and very long release. So I open the attack and open the release, and then yeah, somebody does mention the additive is in nature tricky to program. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm discussing with John already if we would make, for instance, a Blade 2 with also the option to analyze samples in a special way, but also to treat these samples. But that's a different story, so it's quite some work to do on that spot. The main idea of Blade was that normally you would have a square waveform or a saw waveform, which you know from the classic synthesizers, and the idea was that you can control these harmonics. So if I would, for instance, go here to, as an example, default preset, sounds very thin, it's a kind of saw waveform. And here you can see that I have in the harmonizer the option to toggle between odd and even. So if I go to only odd harmonics, I can display them down here, by the way. So you see this dial, if it's in the middle, is a saw waveform which has odd and even harmonics. And if I go to the right, you see the even harmonics disappear, and then you have a square waveform. So that was basically the idea, that you control the waveforms by using these controls here. And now you could say, okay, let's make a ripple on this, and this the ripple width. You see that there's a ripple now. Of course, the default preset is then a nice basic to see what things do. So you see here, you click here, the spectrum waveform is displayed here, and then you see what the ripple is. So this is the width, how wide the ripple is, and you can see you can make it very wide or very small. Yeah, and then the idea is with using the XY pad is that you change this dynamically. So this ripple I could use now here. I could say play, and then select I use the right mouse button to set to a circle. You see it, play loop. And then I use this one on this ripple. So now I go here to the ripple. You see, if you display the spectrum dynamic, you can see. So that is, by the way, from the bass, it's not that complex if you know a bit of the basics. So I'm gonna now to the chat room. Oh, an oscilloscope. Yeah, that is not built in. I think, or maybe this one. This is the oscilloscope, but it's not dynamic. This one is static. Oh, okay, go here. So this is the oscilloscope of this waveform now. This dynamic shows it dynamic. So the ripple makes ripples in these harmonics. And then you have also what I said, the timbre here. So you can select a default timbre, for instance this, and combine between those two. And the moment when you use this XY pattern, make this dynamic changes. So now I could use this, not ripple, but I use the movement on the timbre. Let's do this. So you get very interesting sounds. Of course, it's very dry. What I could do now is use spread, and it makes a multiple oscillator sound. Makes it a bit fuller, and then of course, what is always nice to do is use a bit of affix. I could use a stereo delay, use a bit of slow attack, and then you have again a spacey pet type of sound. Yeah, somebody mentions the basic harmonics, understanding how this works. Yeah, that's absolutely something which is wise to have some knowledge what harmonics are. I describe this in my book DVD because the way a saw waveform is built up is a kind of math. It has the harmonics in terms of volume, and for instance, yeah, the square waveform. If you take a saw wave and you remove the even harmonics, you get a square waveform. So it's a kind of math thing. So yeah, as mentioned, today I talked about making some ambient music. So Blade has some interesting presets for this. Let me see. We have here. Let me see. Just take one preset. And especially with ambient, sometimes you want to have a very slow fade in and a very long release. And simply you can use this here by controlling the amp section. Increase the attack time so that it fades in very long, and increase the release time. And with pet sounds, I can advise you to keep the sustain always at 100%. This way the sound, when it's at its peak, it stays flat in terms of volume. So that's what you can do with Blade. If you have a preset which you like already, and you think, oh, it's almost there, well then just change the amp section, the attack and release a bit. Maybe just you can experiment a bit here with the harmonizer. Sometimes by accident you run in a very interesting sound. So if you would have a downbeat, let's play a downbeat now. I will play this sound now on top of this beat, and you have a nice ambient feel to it. So yeah, I mean, somebody mentions the XY pad, and yeah, that was really the first one. The initial idea was indeed that the XY pad would be used to control the harmonics, and that did lead to Blade. And as mentioned, sometimes you run into totally fantastic sounds. Sometimes you end up with zero because it's hard to predict what the results are. Okay, so now let's go to some other products. And for instance, Go-To, you see here it has also the XY, only the XY. It has not now around it, not the amount controls directly, but it has two default ones which control the morphing between one and the other waveform. And you can have here a few targets which you could use. But for instance, if you own Go-To, you can go to the manager, of course. There you see we have some, for pet sounds, of course, would be very easy to go to a pet sound to make a ambient sound. But maybe you hear some, okay. Maybe you think, oh, this is a nice sound, but you hear now a chord playing. That is because there's a play mode. There's also nice sounds for ambient, I think so. Well, I hit one note and then it plays a -7 chord. And also here, don't be afraid to experiment with it. Also here you see this amp section which I talked about in Blade. Here it is graphic, and also here you can say, okay, let's change it here a bit, make a longer release or a slow attack. Have a beat. Well, this one uses a phaser, while it has also a delay. And yeah, just let's do another example. I'll simply pick one preset, go to pads. I'm not sure what is this. That is already an ambient one. I want maybe it's nice to mention, if you with pad sounds, it's very good, and that's why we add this feature here, exponential envelopes. You see here the change of the release, or linear. A linear is very nice for pad sound. So the attack is already linear, so it comes up very slowly. So maybe you have this pad and then simply pick another waveform here. I mean, it's up to you, and then just give it a try. Maybe you run into something nice. Or here a different one. Let's see if we have a different one here. You can change the fader here. Yeah, I'm just checking the chat room. Yeah, that's a good point. If you have a somebody just mentioned to program these things, don't turn up the modulation on something all the way every time. So little subtle things. Yeah, that's try small little tweaks on sound. Sometimes a little movement can be a lot. I can show that, for instance, if you go to the synth lead sounds. There is one here. Let me see where it is. It's more trumpet sound. It's just one oscillator, but if you have then make it two oscillators, you can do this in Go-To by using the spread, and the spread makes from one oscillator two oscillator sound, but then make it just a little bit. And here it starts to that's too much. So very little difference, and I can see there's a little free LFO running on the fine tune, and these little things make really that the sound starts to move and to get alive. Somebody does ask, what does Blade specialize in? Yeah, that's a good question. For me, that's hard to mention. Going back here to on Blade, I would say just download the demo version, play around a bit with it. It's a trial and error synthesizer, which means that sometimes by changing the parameters you run into something fantastic, and sometimes it's not that well because it's harder to control. It's a bit like FM synthesis, because you change things which if you turn your cutoff frequency down, then of course you know what happens. But if you change the harmonics of the waveform, you don't know where it ends. So there are all kind of good presets on board. So there's a bank manager here. You can click it here. We have all kind of very good presets from, of course, Jamal. So Blade simply sounds different. That's the good thing about it. I think it's harder to control, but you get some sound with it which are totally different. Or one of the introduction bank, which also shows then a bit what all kind of sounds are inside of it. This one is a wobble, which is so funny. It's totally different than this sound. Or this sound. So, okay, let's just click another sound. I believe that I made a few months ago, because the year is already finished. A few months ago, I made a video about Blade, and in this live stream, I talked only about Blade. And if I'm not wrong, this is of course in the playlist from the live streams, but also then in the playlist of Blade itself. So check it out, and if it doesn't pop up, drop me an email. I can send you the link, but it should be in the playlist on YouTube from Blade. There should be a video about Blade and the live stream where I explain what you can do with Blade, what it is not, and what it does very well. But it's as mentioned, sometimes if you just tweak one dice, you run sometimes in some great sounds, and that's also the surprise and fun part of Blade. So when this winter ends, it's a totally different sound, of course, than what you heard before. So it's a bit less controllable, more a surprise machine from that point. Very special. And of course, Blade was the starting point in using the XY pad also for the other products. So now here we have, for instance, coming back to this ambient story about today. This is Prisma, and Prisma, of course, is great because you can combine the raw pattern synthesizers together. So let me see. This is a very nice sound. And Prisma, you simply can, if you have, let's say, maybe you only have Go2 or only Predator 2, but you still can use Prisma. So Prisma you can request in the My Products, and then it can stack the raw pattern synthesizers, plugins, the instruments. So you also can use Punch or RG. You see this sound is from Jamal. And this one is nice because it's a kind of sequence sound, which is from Predator. So now is this beat below it, but there's also Predator playing. Let's show it to you. It's the original Predator. Here it is. This is the preset used here. kind of percussion ring modulation sound he uses in this patch. Jamal uses FM synthesis, so now I play only this Predator sound. And this sound is combined here, so in Prisma together with Bluetooth, with this sound. And also here you can see there's the XY pad, only the XY pad is here to control the filter. C filter B frequency. So also in Bluetooth we have the XY pad. And the third sound here used is a bell from Bluetooth. Let's see, well, let's open it. And it's a glass sound together with FM synthesis combined. So now in Prisma, these three sounds are combined, and then you have one nice lead sound for ambient music. So this is just one sound. You even can change here. The multi-controls are nice. You can change the Predator tone or the modulation of Bluetooth. So, and of course for ambient music, we have here some super pads, which is a folder with all kind of really very nice pad sounds. So it only takes a bit longer in terms of loading. I see we have Star Trek here, Star Trek number 3. Let's see what kind of sound that is. Okay, I click down the manager now, go to the multi-control page. It's 3 times Bluetooth. Oh, somebody is asking on. I'm checking the live stream. Yeah, essentially the planning was live stream. I started in 2018. The plan is to do each Thursday from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock a live stream, and each time the subject is different. Sometimes I simply ask people, ask a question about something, and then we dive into it. And today we have a theme, a chill out, because it's the last one this year, and a chill out live stream and about ambient music. And so now I have Prisma here with 3 presets from Bluetooth. Of course, it uses a bit more CPU because essentially Prisma is a host. So this sound would be essentially 3 blues tracks. Only you have it as one instrument. So essentially you also could layer 3 tracks and play them together. And the advantage of Prisma, of course, if you have a nice sound which stacks nice together, you can save it and then use it in another track. So that's the basic concept of Prisma. Of course, it takes a bit of time to loading the presets. You can compare it a bit with a sampler when you load in a kind of orchestral stuff inside your sampler. So this one here, you see we have some faders, but here you can even increase the attack. So if you want to make a bit longer attack, let's see. So that controls, in fact, multiple, you see, all the 3 layers, or longer release. Let's make a longer release, let's see. So now you have a really spacey sound. You can, the movement you can speed up. You hear that one? That's one of the presets. So what I want to say is that, of course, we have a lot of presets, but don't be afraid to fiddle around with the preset yourself. And in this case, it is Prisma. For instance, maybe you own Bluetooth. Then download Prisma, go to the Superbanks and try out Star Trek number 3 if you're doing some ambient music. So I have a beat here in the background with punch. And you can make some really nice floating sounds and music. So what I did in this sound is increase the attack, so we got a longer, slower attack and release. Of course, I can go back to the original sound. I simply click up here to original, and then it loads again, and then it has the original sound. So there are all kinds of pad sounds, and Prisma is totally fantastic, and you really can make some super pad sounds simply by combining different types of synthesis. Because let me see if I have a preset. I pick another one here, which is this one uses Predator and Bluetooth, but there should be also one which uses Blade into Blue, and this one uses Blue, to and Blade. That's the cool thing about Blue from Prisma, is that you can use Bluetooth and Blade at the same time, creating one new sound. So if I press here solo, I have this layer 1, which is Blade. You can open it here, and you can still add it. You can still change the sound as you wish, and then save the preset as a Prisma preset again, and it reloads again. The same. Yeah, somebody's asking about Prisma on CPU. Prisma itself is not CPU intensive. It's, of course, if you use two instruments, you use two instruments. So it's comparable as if you would have one track with Blade and Bluetooth together and play them as one sound. What we also did in Prisma is, if you go here to the FX section, as you see here, there's a two FX use, which you can use with an FX send, and that makes that you can save a bit CPU. For instance, if you have Bluetooth with the reverb on and Predator 2 with reverb on, that takes up more CPU. So you can essentially shut down then the reverb in the plugin itself. So you shut down in Predator 2 the reverb, and you shut down the reverb in Bluetooth, and then use the reverb of Prisma. That saves, of course, then the CPU. So Prisma has 4 FX built in, and you can use it as an FX send. Okay, let me see if there are all kinds of things inside of it. Let me see. Also with grooves. Let me see what happens. Well, this one uses twice punch. So if I go to the pages here, you have the layers. You can see layers. Each layer has an easy edit, and the easy edit controls then some parameters from punch. You have a keyboard layout where you can have split points, that kind of stuff. Each layer has its own EQ. MIDI filtering, you can shut down the for instance, the sustain pedal or modulation wheel on some sounds. So it has very deep features, and it's a very creative tool. But of course, it uses a bit more CPU because you really stack instruments, and loading a preset takes a bit of time. So these are the layer parameters. You can see each layer can have some additional controls. There are the 4 FX, and the multi-control page are 4 faders, which you can use to control parameters you like to address. So change length here. So let's see what happens if I open this controller here. Make it shorter. Add reverb. Changing the tuning. Or less bass drum. So Prisma is great if you're doing some film work, game music for games and that kind of stuff. No, it's not possible that the effects parameters in Prisma can be modulated like in Predator 2 or GoTo. No, because they are in the engine of Prisma itself, so there's no connection from that point. But what you can do, of course, is that you can also address the fader to the FX. So the faders, the multi-control page from Prisma, you still can use them to control the FX which are in Prisma. So that's what I did also here in number 3. Add reverb. You see here layer 2 FX2 sand and layer 3 FX2 sand. For both the layers, it increases the reverb amount. And of course, even if you only have GoTo, you still can use Prisma. Let me see if I can find a preset for you guys. Okay, I go to Super Pads. I think this one was one done with GoTo. You see here, loading, please wait. So it needs to load, of course. No. Thin Mars is not done by GoTo. Just give it another try. What I could do, that's the trick, of course. Give me 1 second. Is to look in my preset list, and when I go to my documents, okay, keep them up. If I go to my documents and I go to Prisma, on the date of a file created, I can see what are newer presets. So I go search here. Yeah, and should be Dark Planet. So go here, Planet Manager, the preset Dark Planet. Let's see if that one is indeed. Yeah, that one uses Bluetooth and GoTo. So let's see what GoTo does. I put it on solo, open it. Oh, this makes this very dark noise sound. And on top of that, I added Blue, this sound from Blue. So I click here on solo for layer 2. It's a choir sound. And then let's see what layer 1 is. Added plugin, I can see what layer 1 is. That's a Solina type of string sound. It's very thin. Maybe some people who know Solina strings from the past, which was a kind of replacement for string sounds in the 70s. Which is still used because it's a very nice, high, thin sounding sound. And you see here, you can have a mellow sound making. And also here you can change the attack time. Oh, somebody has a Selena. That's cool. Yeah, the timeline for the next Blue and the next Blade version, that's very hard to predict. What I can tell you anyhow is that we will have now in January or February at last, we will have one new FX and also one new synthesizer. So the Explore 5 bundle gets a nice additional 2 plugins. So keep an eye next year on the live streams and of course the newsletter. And the FX, what we will release, is a very special one, which is a very cool stuff for the creative people on this planet. So yeah, and of course Blade 2, what we are thinking about is Blade 2 has, of course Blade now controls the harmonics, but we want to have it a bit similar also what you can do with Predator, so that you, if I go to Predator now, Predator has of course the user waves and the analyzing stuff of user waves. Big screen, you can draw your own waveforms, but this is still a very static way of doing it. Of course, if you would analyze a sample in Predator 2, it takes the harmonic content, but it's only a fraction. And what it would be interesting if to take it a bit longer, so it would be a bit more resynthesis type of stuff. And the thing what I like to do is that resynthesis is interesting, but also it's a bit hard to control in terms of editing the sound. So I have some interesting ideas to change that on a different way. And this idea, I think we will combine together with the in Blade, so that in Blade you would have the classic Blade way of changing the harmonics, but also then most likely doing it a bit like we have it in Predator 2, that you also can change the partials in Blade 2, that we will do, but also some other stuff. So plenty of things are ahead next year, and some interesting new sounds we hopefully can make you happy with. Okay, so I'm now checking the somebody's asking, it's a good question. Now, essentially, with Prisma, somebody does ask, if you record Prisma, does it record the individual plugins? No, Prisma has its own format. So essentially, if you would load in Prisma again, and it will play the sound from Prisma. Of course, you need to have the product. So if a preset uses Bluetooth and you don't have Bluetooth, it will not play it, of course. But okay. Yeah, Bluetooth, sorry, Predator 2 with the wave editing. It's very deep, and it's you can compare it a bit like the traditional PPG type of stuff, microwave type of stuff you can do here. There's a lot possible. I have quite some Predator 2 videos about the user waves and what you can do with it, and it's very interesting feature. Of course, yeah. Predator 2 has a lot of presets. We recently had a new version of Predator 2 with new presets, for instance, also from Jamal. And sometimes you run in sounds which are really, really weird, like this one. Let me see. So I'm almost laughing. So there's so much possible, and of course Predator 2, we have a special ambient bank. It's a bell, but with this bell you easily could... okay, let's go back here to normal view. And Predator 2, I have of course also the amp section, what I did mention in Blade, the amp section with the attack, decay, sustain, and release. Here you can easily, by opening the attacks parameter, making the pet sounds. So originally it was a bell. And of course, what is very powerful thing inside Predator 2 is the reverb. So let me see. Let me look it up. I'm looking for a sound now. Oh, well, let's do it just from scratch. Examples. I pick default. How nice reverb can be, I can show you. Now I have a sinus waveform. I will do a pitch envelope on it to give it a certain click. So we have an envelope. I address it to oscillator 1 and the semi. That's too slow, so make it fast. I'll make it 1 octave higher here. And let's see what happens if you use on this simple sound only reverb. It's really insane what reverb can do. Reverb, and then I go insane in terms of size and length. Okay, make the sound a bit different here, the envelope. Yeah, sure. Somebody does mention the ideas for having Blue 3. Yeah, definitely. That's on the table. There is there are a few things on the table for 2019, and for sure we dive into Punch, updating Punch. That's a big idea to have that updated, but also Blue 3 is on our mind. So yeah, no, just having this sound. Maybe let's try it without the. Just take a saw wave. Just by using reverb. And what is nice is to add a bit of LFO. Go here to pitch LFO. No. So now you can make pretty easy some ambient sound just by using the reverb. It's maybe nice to have behind the reverb, not ahead of the reverb, but behind the reverb, the ensemble to make it totally swirly. Let's see how that works out. It's a bit too much. Bit of velocity on the filter. Yeah, somebody is asking about Prisma. Yeah, Prisma is indeed a player. It combines, you can stack up to 4 instruments. Yeah, in the meantime, this is a nice sound just by using a saw wave, a bit of modulation on the pitch by the pitch envelope, which is down here. A bit of velocity on the filter. So reverb has a big influence. I can bypass it here by clicking on this bypass symbol. You see how dry it sounds now, and then you add the reverb and oh, I could pick another waveform, maybe a square, I'll make it a bit. So reverb is very important, especially for ambient music, to make the sound. And they even use longer reverbs, have sometimes very short percussive sounds. Let me see if I can do this by making the size and length even more bigger. Just give it a try. Yeah, it can sound very strange. Let's put a phaser behind it. So, behind the... So that in terms of ambient, so yeah, just tweak around with these things. So Predator 2 has some ambient patches already on board. This partials beyond, which changes the harmonics. It's a bit like Blades, essentially, only it uses here a wave set. And the wave set you can see here. It uses 8 waveforms and it scrolls through these waveforms. You can select them down here. And you can edit them. Of course, Predator 2 is a very deep synthesizer. It's a really a synthesizer on steroids, and even Bluetooth goes beyond that in terms of synthesis, FM, subtractive. But with Bluetooth you cannot draw your own waveforms, but it has again other things on board. By the way, if you didn't know, Avicii used one of the Reverb presets in blue in a few of his older tracks. Yeah, it could be that could be the case. I know that the muted guitars, which are essentially, if you go to Bluetooth, let's open Bluetooth. Looking to see Bluetooth. Oh, I did not open it yet. Add a track instrument. Sorry, I need to add it. Select IK. Why it doesn't open here? From the CSI series, this American detective series, crime series, and also Bluetooth, and this muted guitar, which is, I think, tempo is a bit low, which is essentially not a sample but FM synthesis. And using the arpeggiator or the sequencer, here it is. That one he used in the CSI. This, I believe, this guitar type of thing. I cannot play this melody what he used. I spoke him on the NAM show, this film composer who made the score and the music for the CSI Miami, I believe it was, something like that. But anyhow, of course, the synthesizers are very often used in music productions, and that's why they are made, of course, for making music. Logic. Okay, let's see if somebody has a question. What makes Predator 2 really different from Predator? Yeah, of course, all the original Predator presets are on Predator 2. So if you go to the bank manager, that one is improved, is much better. All the presets are now single files, which also other brands use now. So we step down from using the bank system, which is originally the VST format was a bank with 128 presets. That's not the case anymore. We use now 128 single presets in one folder. So if you see every bank here, which starts with number 1, is the original Predator presets. So they are all inside of Predator 2. And above, which starts with a 0, these are all the new ones for Predator 2. Well, the biggest change is that you can have a lot control. It has the XY pad, and you can have now in the oscillator, there's a big difference that you can morph between two waveforms. So you can really have a wave set of 8 waves and morph between them. That's the biggest difference. So Predator 2 still does the classic Predator sounds, but the reverb did increase in quality. Yeah, it did grow a lot from that perspective. But still, by the way, if you have Predator 2, you still can install Predator 1.6 for your older songs. If you go in the download page of Predator 2, you simply can download Predator 1.6. And you can simply install it by using your Predator 2 serial. So Predator, the original Predator, you still can use even if you have Predator 2. Okay. So I'm checking now the chat room. Yeah, maybe somebody has still a question. We are almost at the end. We still have a bit of time. As mentioned in the playlist, so if you go to the Rob Harpen YouTube channel, you have a playlist and you see playlists. It's very handy because you have tutorials about Reverb 2, tutorials about Sublime Bass 2, about Go 2, and of course there's a playlist which is called live stream, and all the live streams you can see back there. So if you're maybe bored or want to do something relaxing, just checking out how Rob tweaks the synthesizers, well, just pick one of the older ones. From the beginning, for instance, with Blow 2, we have a very nice theme we had that evening that was making pad sounds using Blue 2. So I showed how I made pads in Blue 2, and this live stream is, by the way, also in the Blue 2 folder. So there you also can find it back, because the list is quite long now with the live streams. But you always can look them back and check them out. So each Thursday there is a live stream. So most likely also next week. I always mention them on on the Facebook page and also on Twitter. So maybe wise to follow me on Twitter, and then you can join it. Now, there are currently no plans for Predator 2. The only plan which we would have for Predator is that we have a compact view, which makes that the upper section here, where you select the presets and the bank manager, would be down here, which makes it a bit more compact, which is nice if you use, for instance, the NKS system, because with the NKS system you don't use the preset section here, but you use the NKS preset section. But that's planned also for next year. That will still take a bit of time. And of course, what we like to do is expand with Predator 2 with more presets. We already have a lot of new presets which use the new Predator 2 features, but it still keeps on growing. Okay, guys. So yeah, hopefully I see you next week again. And as mentioned, keep an eye on the homepage or Twitter. There I will mention if there is a live stream on this Thursday evening from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock Amsterdam time. Of course, that's a different time from you. CET, they call it. Most likely in America, it would be early in the morning, but essentially that doesn't matter. You can always watch it back in the playlist, this live stream. Anyhow, thank you for watching, and see you next year. I hope you have a very nice party diving into 2019, and see you back next year, guys. Thank you for watching.